When Asuka lost to Bianca Belair at WrestleMania 39, she tweeted afterwards that she needed the power of your anger to bring chaos back to WWE. But that hatred was very much in character. The hatred that Brock Lesnar and Goldberg felt at WrestleMania 20, however, that was a different matter. I'm Andy from What Culture, and here are 10 WWE stars who hated their own WrestleMania matches. Number 10. Goldberg and Brock Lesnar, WrestleMania 20. The live crowd certainly enjoyed themselves watching this match. Goldberg and Brock Lesnar had an awful time at WrestleMania 20, enduring all kinds of chants and jeers from a New York City audience that was more than happy to see the back of these big beefy boys on their way out of the company, which everybody knew about as they hit the ring. Steve Austin, too, had a bemused half grin across his face as the special referee, but Brock and Bill had a horrible time, eventually informing Goldberg's return to WWE in 2016, which was partly to exorcise the demons of this ghoulish display. And the work that Goldberg and Lesnar did together all those years later was an absolute triumph. As much as WrestleMania 20 stunk, at least we got something good out of it in the end. Number 9. Roddy Piper, WrestleMania 2. Roddy Piper faced Mr. T in a boxing match at WrestleMania 2, and yes, it was quite rubbish, as well as being as bad-tempered as anyone who knows anything about Piper's fiery career could expect. Piper didn't take kindly to the thought of the A-Team star strolling into his business and playing wrestler, and he let Mr. T know about it. In later years, Roddy continued to work the gimmick by talking dismissively about Mr. T and the need for the match to even happen at all. Nonetheless, even if he was working, he came off very much like a wrestler pissed off that he had to work with a sodding actor. Still, Mr. T was a pretty important celebrity piece of WrestleMania's early success, so there is some good to the bad as well. Number 8. The Undertaker, WrestleMania 9. The Undertaker is right to hate his WrestleMania 9 match with Giant Gonzalez because frankly, it is a historic omnishambles, and now a go-to choice whenever you want to bring up not only the worst WrestleMania matches ever, but probably the worst wrestling matches ever as well. Gonzalez was an absolutely awful wrestler in an awful bodysuit, totally incapable of looking even halfway credible against The Undertaker. And in his podcast years later, Bruce Pritchard revealed that Taker, at one point, actually pulled Bruce aside backstage and asked why he'd been lumped with the big lump. Taker didn't like it at all, but there were worse days to come for him, as we'll talk about later. Number 7. Triple H, WrestleMania 12. Rewatch WrestleMania 12 in its entirety and you will see one Hunter Hearst Helmsley jobbing out to the Ultimate Warrior in precisely 1 minute and 39 seconds. It's quite funny to watch retrospectively, but an early black mark on Triple H's career that he almost certainly wants to tip-X over and completely forget about. Not only was Triple H forced to do the big JOB to a cooked old idiot, but that cooked old idiot no-sold the pedigree in the process, nuking any hope that Paul would have had of saving face in defeat. A terrible night for WWE's head of creative. I mean, not that he was head of creative back then, but I'm sure the match would have gone completely differently if he was, but, you know, this was weird, and it still is. Number 6. Dean Ambrose and Brock Lesnar, WrestleMania 32. This match is infamous primarily for the complete lack of anything that Brock Lesnar seemingly wanted to do for his opponent. This no-holds-barred street fight was as exciting as spending 12 hours stuck in an elevator with Ryback for company, primarily because Lesnar didn't want to do any of the wilder spots that Ambrose had pitched to him in the build. And Brock wasn't the only one questioning Dean's hardcore leanings, with Paul Heyman, he of ECW fame, weirdly, questioning the approach as well, remarking later that Brock didn't have any fun working with Ambrose at all. So, you ended up with a disinterested Brock Lesnar, a frustrated Dean Ambrose, and a crummy WrestleMania match that we should probably just delete from the network. Number 5. Kevin Owens and Chris Jericho, WrestleMania 33. Vince McMahon hated this match. We know that, as revealed years later on a WWE documentary. When Kevin Owens got backstage and asked the old goober if his match with Chris Jericho was okay, Vince McMahon said no, leaving Kevin Owens feeling like dirt. And Jericho is still pretty annoyed about it in 2023, calling it one of the reasons he ended up leaving WWE in 2018. In fact, Jericho was already a bit pissed going into the show, annoyed that his and Kevin's great feud had been punted out of the Universal title scene in favor of Goldberg versus Brock Lesnar. While Kevin and Chris tried to salvage things with a good match on the night, they got chewed out by a crazy old man as soon as they were backstage. Number 4, Steve Austin. WrestleMania 18. If you were to put Steve Austin and Scott Hall together in the ring at any point between 1993 and, say, 1998, it probably would have been one of the coolest things ever. Unfortunately, the former Razor Ramon was a shell of the super cool performer he used to be by the time he returned to WWE in 2002, and his match with Steve Austin at WrestleMania 18 was disappointing. It was a sizable drop-off for Austin as well, who went from having one of the greatest WWE matches of all time against The Rock at the WrestleMania 17 main event to struggling on the mid-card with Hall. Mania 18 was one to forget for both men, but Steve definitely hated it more. He ended up walking out of the company a few months later, and by that point, Hall was already gone as well. Number 3, Kurt Angle, WrestleMania 35. Kurt Angle jobbed out to Baron Corbin in what was supposed to be his farewell match at WrestleMania 35. He did the right thing, Kurt, by putting a younger wrestler over on his way out, but it was a shoddy match enjoyed by few, and Kurt was amongst those who weren't happy with it. Where once Kurt looked like the baddest man on the planet whenever he was in a WWE ring, here he had rarely looked sadder, and he has spoken on his displeasure towards this match several times since then. Of course, Kurt is now way too physically shot to ever get back in the ring, so he's not going to have a chance to make good on this match, and he would have been in pretty rough shape by the time he faced Corbin in the first place. Regardless, this was not the best way to go out for a bona fide pro wrestling legend. Number 2, Steve Austin again. WrestleMania 14. This one is a little bit surprising. Stone Cold revealed recently that he hated his WrestleMania 14 win over Shawn Michaels as soon as it finished. Austin, who became the WWF champion in this match, believed in his own mind that this was a 2 out of 5 match at best, and even told Vince McMahon that it was the shts as soon as he stepped through the curtain. Austin does admit that being out there with Mike Tyson was pretty cool, but he remains disappointed with the match itself. And Shawn, lest we forget, was nursing a back injury at the time, and as a result, he failed to perform at anything close to his best. Number 1, The Undertaker. Again. WrestleMania 33. For the second time on this list, we have The Undertaker, and also for the second time on this list, he was totally right to hate one of the matches he had at WrestleMania. WrestleMania 33 was a downright sad and worrying night for The Undertaker, who, in his match with Roman Reigns, had never looked so slow, sloppy, or downright lost in his long career. Taker entered a troubling, incompetent performance that showcased his mortality and declining skills like never before, whiffing spot after spot in a truly cringeworthy main event. I can say these things because Undertaker thought it was bad as well. He was so pissed off that he actually felt the need to apologize to Roman for his own performance afterwards. It was torture watching the guy struggle, and now Undertaker despises the mere thought of WrestleMania 33. It definitely pushed him closer to retirement, causing a huge crisis of confidence for the dead man, who famously left his jacket and hat in the ring afterwards and then eventually came back. Thankfully, the Graveyard Dogs and the Boneyard have both happened since then, and both of them kicked ass. So I guess the dead man got his redemption in the end. Anyway guys, that's our list, but what do you think, and can you think of any others? Let us know down in the comments below. After that, don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. Then you can follow us on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE and myself at Andy H. Murray. The H stands for hate. Goodbye.